Hey, and welcome back to the channel. I know this is a little bit odd for my channel, but I'm going to talk to you today about closing your in-ground pool. It's almost Christmas here in Indiana as I film this, and just a public service announcement: if you haven't winterized your pool and you live in a climate where it freezes, you should get on that right now. So here's how I did it with my fiberglass in-ground pool. Okay, so first step when you're closing and winterizing your in-ground pool, you're going to want to brush it and then sweep it really well. The entire pool, make sure you get everything as clean as possible. Then you want to test the chemicals and adjust them as necessary to get them perfectly balanced before you add winterizing chemicals and turn all the equipment off. Then you're going to want to add your winterizing chemicals. That may vary depending on exactly what type of pool you have and what you want to accomplish. I used a winterizing clarifier and a non-chlorine shock that I'll make sure to link to in the description and show you exactly what I used. And some of these chemicals you can put in at the same time as long as you're circulating. Some of them you have to wait a while. So just go by your manufacturer's recommendations for the chemicals and for your pool and all that. For me, the winterizing chemical, the clarifier, I was able to circulate that and add the shock while that was circulating as well. So that's what I did. You want to let it circulate with a high pump speed, or if you've got a recirculation sort of setting on your pump, you can use that. Mine doesn't have that. I can just set it to a high speed because I've got a variable speed pump on mine. Let it circulate for at least an hour. I think I waited about 2 while I was getting things ready. So with the clarifier, I diluted that in a bucket of water before adding it to the pool. And then I just added the shock directly to the pool. It's best to do this on a day when it's not super windy. There was a little bit of wind when I did it, and that's not cool. Ouch. Okay, so be careful when you do that if you're just dumping it into the pool like I did. Next, you're going to want to shut off your equipment. So I started with the pump, just turned it off, and then I shut off my salt chlorine generator. If you don't have one of those, you don't have to worry about that step. Then I shut off my heater. Also, if you don't have one of those, don't worry about that step. And then just to be certain, I shut off all the breakers for those pieces of equipment before I blew out the lines. And the reason you want to shut everything off and make sure it's off, especially if you have a heater that kicks on at a certain pressure, is the heater can't tell the difference between water pressure and air pressure. So if you're blowing air through the lines and your heater's on, it might try to kick on while you're blowing air through the lines. And that's especially bad with a gas heater. So turn all that off. You're also going to want to shut off your gas valve on your gas heater if you have one of those. The next thing I did was I drained all the equipment that had drain plugs in it. So my Hayward pump has 2 drain plugs, and you can see here the locations of those drain plugs. So remove both of those and just let the water run out. And then you're going to want to remove the any drain plugs in your filter housing. I have cartridge filters on my setup, so that's another thing we'll talk about later. And there may be plugs in your heater. From everything I've seen, you don't necessarily have to worry about those, especially if you're going to blow the heater out, which I did. And go ahead and put all those plugs in the basket of your pump, and that way you don't lose them. And then the next thing I did was I removed my filters from my filter housing. I have cartridge filters, and before I put them back in the spring, I will clean them out really well and make sure that they are ready for a new pool season. Then you're also going to want to store those filters in a dry place for the winter, somewhere that's not too cold. They can probably survive the cold, but I'm storing mine in my detached garage. Then you're going to want to remove the pressure gauge from your filter housing. That's something that if it gets too cold or freezes, it can become damaged. I know a guy around here who had to replace his last year because he left it in all winter. So remove that, put it in the filter basket or in a safe place with other pool equipment so you'll know where it is next season. The next thing I did was I disconnected my salt chlorine generator and checked that out. I recently just cleaned it out with some pressurized water and a little bit of muriatic acid solution. So it didn't need anything, but if you've got some scale buildup, you're going to want to clean your salt chlorine generator out as well before next season. Okay, now we're getting to the point where we're going to talk about blowing out the lines. You've got two types of lines that you want to blow out: the return lines, which have jets on the end of them, and then your skimmers, which pull water into the pumping system from the pool. So I have a pretty big pool. It's a Thursdays Aspen 16 by 40. It has 3 jets and 2 skimmers. You have to get some specialized equipment for this. You can either block off the jets completely and blow the air out of them as you screw in the caps. I didn't do that. I got something called a duck valve, which is really cool. I'll link to it in the description. It's basically just a one-way valve. I screwed them into all 3 of my jet housings, the return lines, and then once they're tight and installed properly, you can just blow air through the lines, and when you stop blowing the air through the lines, they close off, and you don't have to worry about leakage there. So I'll get more into that when I actually blow out the lines. And then the other thing I used is called a gizmo, and I used that in the skimmers. And what that does is when it's screwed into the pipe at the bottom of the skimmer, then when the water in the skimmer freezes, it crushes the gizmo instead of pushing out against the sides of the skimmer and prevents damage to the skimmer. And mine has a blow-through valve in it as well, where you can blow out the lines through it, and then you cap it, and that prevents it from having water in it as well. So once the duck valves and the gizmos are installed, you're ready to blow out the lines. Now, I just used a shop vac to blow out my lines. Obviously, I ran it in reverse, and I had to get creative with the hoses a little bit to make everything fit right, but it worked really well. So you can see here, blowing out the return lines, you want to make sure you get bubbles from all of your return lines coming out about looking equally. So you want to make sure you're getting the same amount of bubbles from each one. And if you got the duck valves, when they're all bubbling the same, I have 3, and I think there's probably some footage of that, of all 3 of them bubbling. When they're all bubbling about the same, you can stop the shop vac or whatever kind of pump you're using, and you should be good to go. And then the last thing on those is there's some winterizing caps you can just put on the duck valves as well to prevent freezing of the actual rubber in the duck valves. For the skimmers, it's about the same. I hooked up the shop vac, and then you want it to basically look like a geyser, and keep the air pressure going until you're seeing just a very fine mist or no water at all coming out of those gizmos that are attached to the skimmer lines. And then while I was blowing out my jets, I went ahead and blew air through my heater as well. And there was a plug that you could pull out on the heater, and I took that out while I was blowing air through just to make sure I got all the water out of the lines in my heater. Then I added antifreeze to my lines. I added about a gallon of antifreeze to each part of the system. So about a gallon to the skimmer lines and about a gallon to the return lines as well. I used a funnel and a hose to do that, and with the return lines I had to get a little creative. Luckily, the guys that put my pool in put a cap on at the end of my or put a cap on to give me easy access to the return lines, and I just used a hose and a funnel to get the antifreeze in those. And then for the skimmer lines, I just poured it directly into the gizmos, so it would go down into the lines and get to the lowest point. The last thing I did was after getting all the air blown out of the lines, your skimmers have a thing called a weir in them, and it kind of regulates the water flow. And each one of those weirs has a way of removing it so that it doesn't get frozen and damaged as well. So on mine, it's just a little peg that you kind of slide sideways, and you can pull them out of there pretty easily. So make sure you grab those. Keep your skimmer baskets, your weirs, and your fish eyes, anything that screws into your return lines, anything like that. Keep it all in the skimmer basket or in a place where you'll remember to find it next year. After that, the only thing left to do was close the cover, and I was done winterizing my pool. It just took me a couple of hours, and really for the amount that it cost to pay a pool professional to do it, for me it felt like a good decision to do it myself instead. So I think I spent a total of about $100, and it was going to be $400 at least to have someone from a pool company do it. So a lot of savings there. If you are the least bit handy and you have some of the right equipment, you should be able to handle it yourself as well. Thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate you watching the video. If you like this video, I hope you give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, a lot of it has to do with cars or mowers or things like that, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button and click the bell to get notifications when I put out new content. Thanks again for stopping by. See you soon.